Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to our Sravanam Saturday series of systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam. I am asked to serve the Bhagavatam today purely by the mercy of all the Vaishnavas, by the grace of Sri Sri Radha Vrindavan Network, and there are far more qualified listeners here, so please let's keep it as an interactive discussion. I will read and open it up for an informal discussion as always. So today we plan to cover Canto 2nd, Chapter 1st, verses 15 to 19. It's a lot of material, long purports. So if it is okay with everyone, we can read the purports and then discuss realizations, or if you have already read the purports, we can just open it up for discussion. Okay. I'm okay to read the purports because every time I read, I find something that I have missed the last time and some new realization. So we can all read together and discuss if you allow. So we'll start with first verse for today, which is text 15. Antakale tu purusha
Antakale tu purusha
agate gata sadhvasaha
agate gata sadvasaha
chindayad asanga shastrena
chindayala sanga shastrena
spruham dehe nuyechatam.
ruham dehe nuyechatam.
So because there are lots of verses to cover today as planned, we don't need to repeat, I'm thinking, so if that is okay. I do want to read the synonyms and the translation. We can all read it together. Antakale, at the last stage of life. Tu, but. Purusha, a person. Agate, having arrived. Gata sadhvasaha, without any fear of death. Chindyat, must cut off. Asanga, non-attachment. Shastrena, by the weapon of. Spruham, all desires. Dehe, in the matter of the material tabernacle. Anu, pertaining. Ye, all that. Cha, also. Tam, them. Translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death. But one must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it and all desires thereof. It's a strong sentence, but let's see in the purport with so many amazing realizations. Does somebody want to read the purport?
The foolishness of gross materialism is that people think of making a permanent settlement in this world, although it is a settled fact that one has to give up everything here that has been created by valuable human energy. Great statement, scientists, philosophers, etc., who are foolish without any information of the spirit soul, think that this life of a few years only is all in all, and that there is nothing more after death. This poor fund of knowledge, even in the so called learned circles of the world, is killing the vitality of human energy, and the awful result is being keenly felt. And yet, the foolish materialistic men do not care about what is going to happen in the next life. The preliminary instruction in Bhagavad Gita is that one should know that the identity of the individual living entity is not lost even after the end of his present body, which is nothing but on outward dress only. As one changes an old garment, so the individual living being also changes his body, and this change of body is called death. Death is therefore a process of changing the body at the end of the duration of the present life. An intelligent person must be prepared for this and must try to have the best type of body in the next life. The best type of body is a spiritual body, which is obtained by those who go back to the kingdom of God or enter the realm of Brahman. In the second chapter of this canto, this matter will be broadly discussed. But as far as the change of body is concerned, one must prepare now for the next life. Foolish people attach more importance to the present temporary life, and thus the foolish leaders make appeals to the body and the bodily relations. The body, the bodily relations extend not only to this body but also to the family members, wife, children, society, country, and so many other things which end at the end of life. After death, one forgets everything about the present bodily relations. We have a little experience of this at night when we go to sleep. While sleeping, we forget everything about this body and bodily relations. Although this forgetfulness is a temporary situation for only a few hours, death is nothing but sleeping for a few months in order to develop another term of bodily engagement which we are awarded by the law of nature according to our aspiration. Yes or no? No? Okay. Therefore, one has only to change the aspiration during the course of this present body, and for this there is need of training in the current duration of human life. This training can be begun at any stage of life or even a few seconds before death. But the usual procedure is for one to get the training from very early life, from the stage of brahmacharya, and gradually progress to the grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas orders of the life. The instruction which gives such training is called varnashram dharma, or the system of sanatan dharma, the best procedure for making the human life perfect. One is therefore required to give up the attachment to family or social or political life just at the age of 50 years, if not earlier, and the training in the vanaprastha and the sannyas ashrams is given for preparation of the next life. Foolish materialists, in the garb of leaders of the people in general, stick to family affairs without attempting to cut off relations with them, and thus they become victims of nature's law and get gross bodies again, according to their work. Such foolish leaders may have some respect from the people at the end of life, but that does not mean that such leaders will be immune to the natural laws under which everyone is tightly bound by the hands and feet. The best thing is, therefore, that everyone voluntarily give up family relations by transferring the attachment from family, society, country, and everything thereof to the devotional service of the Lord. It is stated herein that one should give up all desires of family attachment. One must have a chance for better desires. Otherwise, there is no chance of giving up such morbid desires. Desire is the concomitant factor of the living entity. The living entity is eternal, and therefore his desires, which are natural for a living being, also are eternal. One cannot, therefore, stop desiring, but the subject matter for desires can be changed. So one must develop the desire for returning home back to Godhead, and automatically the desires for material gain, material honor, and material popularity will diminish in proportion to the development of devotional service. A living being is meant for service activities, and his desires are centered around such a service attitude. Beginning from the top executive head of the state down to the insignificant pauper in the street, all are rendering some sort of service to others. The perfection of such a service attitude is only attained simply by transferring the desire of service from matter to spirit, or from Satan to God. Hari Bol.
Wow, Hari Bol. So, yeah, I decided to read the purports because Prabhupada has said everything. There is not much for me to add, but we will still just share some reflections and discuss. After this verse, there is a continuation. So, we'll discuss now and then read the rest of the verses. So, in this verse, I think it starts with coming down to the basic concept in spiritual knowledge that I'm not my body, and what happens as death is just I leave the body behind but carry on with the journey. And so, like His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj has said, death is like life's final exam, and every exam needs some training, preparation for it. Instead of just the common analogies that I have heard is like getting the best cage or decorating the cage but forgetting to feed the bird, or renovating a hotel room, for example, which are all temporary facts. So it is nothing but foolish to spend time and energy on these temporary aspects. This is so simple yet so difficult to fully implement aspect of spiritual knowledge. All the titles, all the roles that we play in this life, or all the relations we have are like the roles that we play in a game or in a play. And our ultimate final exam is when, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, yam yam vapi, like whatever you think of at the end of your life, surely you will attain that kind of body in the next life. But the world around us today is so materialistic, and it takes into view only current life, only the here and now. The phrase "you only live," Hare Krishna, the phrase "you only live once" has become such a key phrase, and there is no concept of retirement. Like in academia, when I heard about the term emeritus professor, initially I didn't know what it meant, but it just means the professor hasn't retired; they are still serving.
Even after
Yeah, that's those are the professors who are called emeritus professors. So there is no concept of mandatory retirement in this country, as opposed to what is advised in our Vedic culture, that at age 50 one is advised to leave family life and get into Vanaprastha ashram. So there is such a contrast in what we see around us versus what is advised in our Vedic culture. And one line that stuck with me in this purport is, desire is a concomitant factor of the soul. In medicine, we use the word concomitant all the time. Concomitant medicines means the medicines that are taken simultaneously while someone is on a clinical trial. So as long as soul exists, desire will exist, is what Prabhupada is saying. And the idea of getting rid of all the desires seems next to impossible. So what we have learned from the Vaishnava acharyas, Vaishnava teachers, is we have to dovetail the desires to service of the Lord. So desireless could mean, in this case, there is no separate desire from our constituent nature, Jivera Swarupahai, Krishna Nityadas. So we are eternal servants of the Supreme Being, and being the parts and parcels of the Lord, a part is useless unless it is in service of the whole. So unless we serve the Lord, we are not really serving. So that is our eternal duty. Sanatan Dharma is referenced in this purport. So we have to awaken that dormant nature of ours and dormant love for Krishna. I was reading about desire and I came across a beautiful. Okay, let me take this closer. Hari Bol, is this any better? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear it in this temple now. So let me go back to what stuck for me in this purport is the line that Prabhupada says, desire is a concomitant factor of the soul, which means as long as soul exists, desire will exist with the soul. So what we learn from our Vaishnava teachers is that desireless is almost impossible. So what desireless in this context could mean is that there is no separate desire from our constituent nature, our eternal nature, as explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is that Jivera Swarupahaya Krishnera Nityadas. So we are eternal servants of Radha Krishna, and to serve the Supreme, being parts and parcels of the Lord, a part is useless if it is not in the service of the whole. So as long as we dovetail our desires to the desire of the Lord and please the Lord, then it is equated with being desireless in this context. And while reading about desire, I came across a beautiful explanation by is referred to as a saint, poet, Kabir. He has written how over time, by the practice of yoga, the desires are reduced, and eventually the only desire is bhakti or devotion to the Lord. So that is considered as a desireless state. It was an article on Psychology Today, how desires can be reduced by training. So that is what is referenced in this purport, like by the Vanaprastha stage in the Varnashram Dharma. Once we cut down family attachments, then desires to please those family relations, it's like a training that is provided. So we'll describe in the future verses, but the idea is to prepare for the final stage, because it is clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita that death is nothing but changing clothes, like old clothes, vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya, or changing body, like dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara. So that is what I got from this verse. Does anybody want to add something?
Yeah, we announced everything. You're the most qualified person to share something about that. Yeah, bro.
Yeah, I think it's been covered.
It's well covered. Yeah, one thing I wanted to share was the context of this verse. So Parikshit Maharaj is in front of Sukdev Goswami. Sukdev Goswami, he has everybody collectively elected to speak to Parikshit Maharaj because of his last few days. So that is why, this is the third verse that Sukdev Goswami is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj ever. So this is the beginning of Bhagavatam.
I didn't realize that.
First verse, he talked, okay, you chant the holy names of the Lord.
Yeah.
Then he goes on explaining that, how Like there are other examples who had very little time.
Yeah,
Like
Khatwanga
Khatwanga.
last week
Yeah.
we discussed.
And then here he is that okay, so even at the time of death, don't be fearful. We should be bold enough to face this death. And how? So by cutting all our attachments to the material body and everything pertaining to it. So like now that is a context, right? The person
Yeah.
is dying, 7 days left. This is the beginning. So he's setting the stage. Like okay, first thing first. Like Bhagavad Gita also.
Mhm.
First thing, Krishna is not saying Sarvadharman Paritya. First thing is first to understand this is the body
Mhm.
and what is the soul.
Basic concept.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's very nice that how Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, they both align so nicely. And so now how does that apply to us? Right? Because I don't think I'm dying in 7 days.
Yeah.
That's a foolishness.
Vanaprastha at 50 years, I'm getting close to it. Yeah.
So, but that's what we think. However, Prabhupada has said that Parikshit Maharaj knew that he's going to die. We don't even know. So it can happen any moment. So we should take this more seriously than Parikshit Maharaj.
Yeah.
That's
We don't
Prabhupada's
know.
words that Prem Chandra Prabhu shared once. So, but however, so much of emphasis is given on giving up the attachment to the family, relations, and society, country, blah blah blah. But also, and we can see that how Prabhupada is thinking of the people who are not Krishna conscious,
Yeah.
like Satan, or God. So Prabhupada is also
Material is analogous to Satan in that line. From
Right.
material to spiritual is like going from Satan to
exactly.
Yeah.
So then, as devotees, what do we get out of it? That means, at every point of the time, making sure that we don't get attached to this body or the relations that we have to this body, but connecting everything to Krishna, even in the family. It's not wrong, when somebody is serving the wife or the husband or the kids or the parents, knowing that these people are Krishna's devotees. Then then you get attached in that sense that okay, I have to serve. So it's so nice. Krishna consciousness has allowed us to make our attachments also Krishna conscious.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks to Prabhupada, the word dovetail I heard for the first time, how he keeps telling that we need to dovetail our desires, our services in the service of the Lord. And big thanks to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whose disappearance day we'll celebrate today. Because of his instruction, Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world to preach this. So the main takeaway is that, and it is true in my case also, once I learned the big picture of life, fear has diminished. Really, like things that I used to worry about don't really matter anymore as much as things that used to make me anxious. So it is true that once we understand what death really is, we will not fear about it as much, but it's also instructed that we should be afraid of not remembering Krishna at the time of death. That is a real fear, because we don't know when death will hit us, and that's why training is needed, and that's why in the Varnashram Dharma it is stated to start it as early as possible in life. Unlike the contemporary narrative that you are still young and you shouldn't get into spiritual life and don't spend time going to temple or spiritual associations, spend more time on material or the here and now is a common instruction I keep getting. It's hard to fight that in the outside world, but that's a big takeaway as well, to start it early and keep at it. All right. If there is nothing else, we can move on to the next verse. Shlok number 16. Gruhat pravrajito dhiraha
Grihat parvajito dhiraha
punyatirtha jalaplutaha
punyatirtha jalaplutaha
shuchau vivikta asino
suchau vivikta asino
vidhivat kalpitasane.
Vidivat kalpitasane.
Gruhat, from one's home. Pravrajitaha, having gone out. Dhiraha, self-controlled. Punya, pious. Tirtha, sacred place. Jala aplutaha, fully washed. Shuchau, cleansed. Vivikte, solitary. Asinaha, seated. Vidhivat, according to regulations. Kalpita, having done. Asane, on a sitting place. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. One should leave home and practice self control. In a sacred place, he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place, duly sanctified. So, this is where description of what we call Ashtanga Yoga begins. It began in the last verse itself, detachment is part of it. But here specifically, Shukadev Goswami is referring to in the Ashtanga, the 8 limbs of the yoga system that is described by Patanjali, the practice of asana and shucha is one of the. So yamas, niyamas, asana are the first 3 limbs of that Ashtanga yoga. Yamas and niyamas are more like do's and don'ts. Yamas refer to the rules that we follow in our social life, the ethics that we need to follow. And niyamas are more of our personal observances. So cleanliness is one of them he's talking about here. Practicing self-control is, it comes further in the next verse also, we'll see that. So what I was thinking is we'll read 16, 17, 18, or we can do 2 at a time, 16, 17, and then 18 and 19, and then open it up for discussion. But if we have the time, I would like to read the purport together. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So let's see how Srila Prabhupada explains everything, and I won't need to add because there is nothing much that will be left to be added, but we'll still share realizations. So, purport: to prepare oneself for the better next life, one must get out of one's so-called home. The system of Varnashram Dharma or Sanatan Dharma prescribes retirement of family encumbrances as early as possible after one has passed 50 years of age. Modern civilization is based on family comforts, the highest standard of amenities, and therefore, after retirement, everyone expects to live a very comfortable life in a well furnished home decorated with fine ladies and children without any desire to get out of such a comfortable home. High government officers and ministers stick to their prize posts until death, and they neither dream nor desire to get out of homely comforts. Bound by such hallucinations, materialistic men prepare various plans for a still more comfortable life. But suddenly, cruel death comes without mercy and takes away the great plan maker against his desire, forcing him to give up the present body for another body. Such a plan maker is thus forced to accept another body in one of the 84 lakh species of life according to the fruits of the work he has performed. In the next life, persons who are too much attached to family comforts are generally awarded lower species of life on account of sinful acts performed during a long duration of sinful life, and thus all the energy of the human life is spoiled. In order to be saved from the danger of spoiling the human form of life and being attached to unreal things, one must take warning of death at the age of 50, if not earlier. The principle is that one should take it for granted that death warning is already there, even prior to the attainment of 50 years of age, and thus at any stage of life one should prepare himself for a better next life. The system of Sanatan Dharma constitution is so made that the follower is trained for the better next life without any chance that the human life will be spoiled. The holy places all over the world are meant for the residential purposes of retired persons getting ready for a better next life. Intelligent persons must go there at the end of life, and for that matter, after 50 years of age, to live a life of spiritual regeneration for the sake of being freed from family attachment, which is considered to be the shackle of material life. One is recommended to quit home just to get rid of material attachment, because one who sticks to family life until death cannot get rid of material attachment, and as long as one is materially attached, one cannot understand spiritual freedom. One should not, however, become self complacent simply by leaving home or by creating another home at the holy place, either lawfully or unlawfully. Many persons leave home and go to such holy places, but due to bad association, again become family men by illicit connection with the opposite sex. The illusory energy of matter is so strong that one is apt to be under such illusion at every stage of life, even after quitting one's happy home. Therefore, it is essential that one practice self control by celibacy without the least desire for sex indulgence. For a man desiring to improve the condition of his existence, sex indulgence is considered suicidal or even worse. Therefore, to live apart from family life means to become self controlled in regard to all sense desires, especially sex desires. The method is that one should have a duly sanctified sitting place made of straw, deer skin, and carpet, and thus sitting on it, one should chant the holy name of the Lord without offense, as prescribed above. The whole process is to drag the mind from material engagements and fix it on the lotus feet of the Lord. This simple process alone will help one advance to the highest stage of spiritual success. So yeah, in this verse, Shukadev Goswami is talking about limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, and Prabhupada is explaining how that helps in the training that we were talking about in the last verse, training to prepare for life's final exam. And we'll continue on to the next verse and then we'll discuss our realizations. Text 17. Abhyasena manasa shuddham
Abhyase manasudam
Trivrud Brahmaksharam Param
Drivid Brahmaksharam Param
Mano Yachejita Shwaso
Mano Yachejita Swaso
Brahma Bijam Avismaran.
Brahma Bijama Vishwaram.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. First, we'll read the synonyms together. Abhyaset, one should practice. Manasa, by the mind. Shuddham, sacred. Trivrut, composed of the three. Brahmaksharam, transcendental letters. Param, the supreme. Mana, mind. Yachet, get under control. Jita Shwasa, by regulating the breathing air. Brahma, absolute. Bijam, seed. Avismaran, without being forgotten. So what this verse is saying in English is, after sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the three transcendental letters, A, U and and by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as not to forget the transcendental seed. So the letters A, U and together form the transcendental sound vibration Om. So here Shukadev Goswami is instructing Parikshit Maharaj to do pranayam basically. Prana is the breathing air, and to regulate that by chanting Om. And let's see what Prabhupada shares in the purport. Shubhasaka Maharaj, do you want to read the purport? Or if you want.
Is the seed of transcendental realization. It is and it is composed of the three transcendental letters A, U, M. By its chanting by the mind in conjunction with the breathing process, which is transcendental but mechanical way of getting into trance, as devised by the experience of great mystics, one is able to bring the mind, which is materially absorbed, under control. This is the way of changing the habit of the mind. The mind is not to be killed. Mind or desire cannot be stopped. But to develop a desire to function for spiritual realization, the quality of engagement by the mind has to be changed. The mind is the pivot of the active sense organs. And as such, if the quality of thinking, feeling, and willing is changed, naturally the quality of actions by the instrumental senses will also change. Omkara is the seed of all transcendental sound, and it is only the transcendental sound which can bring about the desired change of the mind and the senses. Even a mentally deranged man can be cured by treatment of transcendental sound. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Pranava Omkara has been accepted as the direct, literal representation of the Supreme Absolute Truth. One who is not able to chant directly the holy name of the Lord, as recommended above, can easily chant the Pranava Omkara. This Omkara is a node of address such as, O my Lord, just as Om Hari Om means, O my Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As we have explained before, the Lord's holy name is identical with the Lord himself. So also is Omkara. But persons who are unable to realize the transcendental personal form or name of the Lord on account of their imperfect senses, in other words, the neophytes, are trained to the practice of self-realization by this mechanical process of regulating the breathing functions and simultaneously repeating the pranava omkara within the mind. As we have several times expressed, since the transcendental nature, form, attributes, pastimes, etc. of the personality of Godhead are impossible to understand with the present material senses, it is necessary that through the mind, the center of sensual activities, such transcendental realization be set into motion. The devotees directly fix their mind on the person of the Absolute Truth, but one who is unable to accommodate such personal features of the Absolute is disciplined in impersonality to train the mind to make further progress.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, like it says in the purport here, this is a specific mechanical process to meditate that Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj with technical details. And yes, this is part of Ashtanga Yoga. So one may wonder, because in our Vaishnava acharyas, they don't really recommend practicing Ashtanga Yoga. So one may wonder why Shukadev Goswami is talking about this when earlier he has spoken about the importance of bhakti. So one reason that is given by Vaishnava teachers is that it's in the assembly that Sutta Goswami is speaking, there are all kinds of sages, Shaunakadi Rishi. So it is to attract attention because there are impersonal sages also in that assembly from the Mayavadi sages. That is one of the reasons the people who have attachment to the impersonal form of the Lord, avyakta asakta chetasam, as it is described in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, that verse says that they go through a lot of trouble, klesho adhika, in that verse Krishna says, but it is so attention is gained from those impersonal sages. And also, as described in the purport, this is not completely Ashtanga Yoga, it is mixed with devotion. It is talking about Krishna also. So this is a mixed devotional service, Bhakti Mishrit Dhyana or Ashtanga Yoga. And we'll see in the later verses, this is just the beginning. He's just describing Ashtanga Yoga. He hasn't concluded yet that this is what one should do. Sometimes, like Prince Sindhu Prabhu had said in one of our Bhakti Vriksha programs, sometimes to conclude that rose is the best flower, we have to describe the other flowers. And then we'll conclude that, okay, based on all these qualities, now we can conclude that Bhakti is the utmost service. So probably that is what is coming. We'll see in the future verses. But so in this and the last verse, the limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga that are stressed are brahmacharya, which is celibacy. It's one of the yamas. Asana was already described in the prior verse. Pranayam is described in this verse, where regulating, there are 5 types of prana that we have, and all of these are favorable to bhakti. None of this is like We have the verse in Nectar of Instruction, Atyahara Prayasascha, that is unfavorable, but Pratyahara, sense withdrawal, is actually favorable to bhakti. And bhakti is all encompassing, but we are influenced by various modes of material nature, Prakriti. So, all of these mechanical processes will help us attain more of the sattvic gun, the more of goodness. So, this will help us progress in bhakti. And Krishna has said in the Bhagavad Gita also, he has described dhyana yoga and all of that, but eventually he says the main purpose is man manabhava mad bhakto or satatam kirtayanto mam, always chant or glorify me, Krishna says. And the main instruction, anyone who has read Bhagavad Gita can say that it's sarvadharman parityaja, like abandon all varieties of duties or religion and surrender to Krishna. That's the main purpose. But to get to that stage, prior to these, he does explain dhyana yoga, karma yoga. And one point that was referred to in the verses in the purport is that yes, there are lots of desires, but the strongest of that in the Maya is the sex desire. We discussed last week also that the world runs on it. Prabhupada had also said in New York, right? Like looking at the skyscrapers and all of that. So because it is so strong that it cannot just automatically go away. Like everything we discussed earlier, it also needs training and a proper cleansing process. So it is rooted out and not just like artificially given out. Srila Prabhupada had said that if I have one criticism of my disciples, it's that they are not scared enough of Maya. And he had said once that if after reading the first couple cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, if you still have desire for illicit sex, then you have to start over. So these are the strong statements he have made based on, like you said, the audience or the public that he's preaching. And it also talks about breathing regularly, so that refers to the Shaucha aspect in the Yama limb of Ashtanga Yoga. Cleanliness in general, like cleaning the gross body or the outside environment, invigorates the subtle body as well. We feel good when the environment around us is clean. But internal cleansing is best achieved by chanting, as it is said in the Shikshashtakam, Chetodar Pranamaarjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vidhu Bhushanam Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipada Purna. Like at the end it says Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So Sankirtan Yajna is what is recommended in this age for the cleansing process as well. And it says to sit at a lonely place. That is actually for advanced devotees. I don't think it is practical while living in this world to go to a lonely place. Sadly, like what people call as Ashtanga Yoga in this world today, I used to practice yogasanas a lot, and they used to have Ashtanga Yoga classes. But it is clearly mentioned here that to practice Ashtanga Yoga, you have to go.
Accessibility shortcuts, 13 items, voice guide, off.
Even machines have minds of their own lately, so a lot of training is needed. So yeah, excuse us. So here it says that to practice Ashtanga Yoga, we have to go away from the home, go to the lonely place in the Himalayas. Whereas sadly, what yoga has come down to, in at least the Western world, it has been commercialized and it is just focusing on the asana aspect. It is not really the yoga that was described in the Vedic culture. And then moving on to the 17th verse realizations. So the letters A, U and these are three of the vowels in the Sanskrit alphabet. And together they form the word Om, which even Krishna has described in the Bhagavad Gita, is a transcendental sound representation. Even in the Bible, it is said that in the beginning there was word, and something like sound was like word or God was, I don't remember, but I've heard in classes that what they are referring to is the sound representation of the Lord in the material creature. Like it's like the bijam, it says, right? It's the seed of the transcendental seed of the material creation. And Om is also called Pranava. Pranava means the first breath. Prana means breathing air. And I'm a word nerd. I love learning like different languages and words. So based on the word Om, there are so many words that are present in various languages. Like in English, for example, we say Amen. In Christianity, in Sikh religions, they say Ek Omkar. The words like omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, those are the descriptions of God. The word omni could have come from the root verb om. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a verse. So in the context of our Gaudiya Sampradaya, Vaishnava Acharyas have described in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 7.128, there is a good description of Pranava, which is described as the complete representation of the Lord. I have it open here, so I can just read it. That verse says, the Vedic sound vibration Omkar, the principal word in the Vedic literatures, is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept Omkar as the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the reservoir of the cosmic manifestation. And we can read this later, but it's a great reference in this context. And I totally forgot to chant it, but before we start Bhagavatam session, we all say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We all start with the word Om. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there is also reference to the phrase Om Tat Sat. So these are all transcendental sounds. Chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita explains that verse in 23 regarding why Om Tat Sat, and the two verses following that explain the importance of Om, Tat and Sat. And then Srila Jiva Goswami, in his Bhagavata Sandarbha literature, he also says that in the Vedic literature, Omkar is considered to be the sound vibration of the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only this sound can deliver a conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. So I also heard from the teachers that this sound is for conditioned souls. And in the Bhagavatam, so that Chaitanya Charitamrita verse, it's a long purport, and I specifically want to reference this one verse in the purport. It says, Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smarane Na Kalaha. It says that, yeah, you know the.
So this is also Shikshashtakam.
Okay, yeah, okay, that is Shikshashtakam, sorry. Oh, and then later there is a verse that I wanted to reference. Okay, now I found it. The Goswamis have declared that Pranava or Omkar is the complete representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they have analyzed the word Omkar, saying that the Akarenochate Krishna, Sarva Lokaika Nayakaha, Ukarenochate Radha, and Makaro Jiva Vachakaha. Omkar is a combination of the letters A, U, and the Akar, the A sound, refers to Krishna, who is Sarva Lokaika Nayakaha, the master of all living entities and planets. Nayaka means leader, he is the supreme leader. The letter U indicates Srimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Krishna, and indicates the living entities or jivas. The Om is the complete combination of Krishna, his potency, and his eternal servitors. In other words, Omkar represents Krishna, his name, fame, pastimes, entourage, expansions, devotees, potencies, and everything else pertaining to him. In Maharashtra, where I grew up, Also, I've heard a song growing up, a devotional song like Akara to Brahma, Ukara to Vishnu, and Makara Mahesha, where uh, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh are together combined in Om, they say. The form of Om is also said to be the form of Lord Ganesha, one of the demigods. And Om is chanted first because it is recommended to worship Lord Ganesha first. And unless we say Om, the other demigods cannot hear the prayer, is what I heard from one of the teachers. So that's one of the explanations. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it is explained when it starts talking about the Omkara aspect that yajna or austerities, dana, charity, and tapa. Sorry, yajna was sacrifices, dana, charity, and tapa are austerities. They all become spiritualized by unifying with the Om or Pranava vibration. Pranav word also means glorification. And what, because again I said I love words and languages, the word Om, it was nicely explained by a teacher that to utter the word Om, we only need our throat. We don't need the tongue to like, or for any vowel for that matter. A, E are the vowels in Sanskrit alphabet, and all other letters are formed by mixing these letters using the tongue. So when you say any other letter like K, K, G, G, we need the tongue. But to say A, U, and we only need the throat. So it's like the primary colors, like A, U, and are the primary sounds. And simply by mixing these in many other ways, the tongue makes the other sounds. So Om is the root or the primary sound present in everything that exists. So yes, there is reference to Omkara chanting in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, like I said. And here it says that it is mainly for neophytes or conditioned souls. But yeah, I will open it up to both of everyone here now to see if you have any reflections.
You have to do it. You want to share something? It's covered.
Yeah, no, thank you for such in explaining it so deeply. But yeah, I was also looking at. I was thinking why Prabhupada is bringing the impersonalism here, and he's not directly bringing it, but here Prabhupada is saying that no, but that the name is same as the where does it say? Yes, he's identical
With the holy name.
With the holy name. First of all, he establishes that Om means oh my Lord, and then when you say oh my Lord, then who is referring to? The Hari, and the Supreme Personality of God, and then there is no difference between the name and the person himself. And then he goes on to bring this process that okay, then one has to realize that he is a person. And then I was thinking, okay, Prabhupada is connecting like this, and reminded me of this another verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 8. I think you already referred to that.
Which one is
Chapter
that?
7, text 8, where Krishna says, I am the taste of water.
Yes.
And light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om.
Among syllables, I'm Omkar.
In the Vedic mantra. Yeah. So there in the verse he says, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. So Pranav or Omkar, Prabhupada explains in the purport that how the sounds that is Omkar is the sound vibration which is the beginning of the Vedic hymn. But impersonalists are very much afraid of addressing the Supreme Lord,
Yeah.
So that's why they use this as that's God. Om, the sound vibration in the ether, which is all pervading, and that's why it is important that yes, Om. That is Krishna says that he is that transcendental sound, but at the same time, who is the source of that is also a person, right?
Yeah.
So,
those who cannot yet connect to the personal feature of the Lord, they get attracted to chanting Omkar, and
right.
that's how they start.
Yeah, in that way. And also, I was thinking that you mentioned about Ganesh, right? That it's recommended to worship. It's also
Omkar
the-
form is equated to Ganesha form. In drawings, you will see they draw Om and draw Ganesh out of it.
Right, right. Yeah, but that's art.
Yeah.
um,
No, but it's
But-
because it's described in the Shastras I read. The Omkar form is Ganesha's form.
and also it is there in Nectar of Devotion also.
Mhm.
That before
Yeah.
somebody enters the altar,
To worship. Or pray
praying
to
to
Lord,
Lord Ganesh, but then also it falls into the Pancharatrika Vidhi.
Mhm.
So then, of course, we are more emphasizing on the Bhagavad Vidhi.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't see those formalities happening in many temples,
Yeah.
ISKCON temples.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Just checking if I forgot to say anything, but that is all that I had regarding these two verses. But do read Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila 7.128 that describes about Omkar in the context of Bhakti Yoga. Are we on track with time?
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay, we have 2 more verses, so let's see how much we cover. That was planned for today. We don't have to rush, but we'll see whatever we can cover. There was also reference to, I think I can summarize at the end, but one point I want to add is there was reference to Vishwamitra Muni, how he fell down. So it just speaks to the difficulty of practicing Ashtanga Yoga. No matter how much you control your mind, go to a secluded place, do pranayam, but even the best of the munis, they succumb to temptations. So it is a difficult process to practice, like it goes to say with that example. Right, we'll move on to the next shlok, number 18. Niyached vishayebhyo manasa buddhi sarathihi
Manasa buddhi sarathihi
mana karma bhir akshiptam
mana karma vyakshiptam
shubharthe dharayet dhiya.
shubhate dharayet.
Niyachet withdraw vishayebhya from sense engagements, akshan the senses, manasa by dint of the mind, buddhi intelligence, sarathi driver, mana the mind, karmabhi by the fruitive work, akshiptam by being absorbed in, shubharthe for the sake of the Lord, dharayet hold up, dhiya in full consciousness. Translation: gradually, as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities, and by intelligence, the senses will be controlled. The mind, too absorbed in material activities, can be engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness. Prabhu, do you want to read the purport?
Okay. The first process of specializing. The first process of specializing the mind by mechanical chanting of the Pandava, Pranava, Omkara, and by control of the breathing system is technically called the mystic or yogis process of pranayam, or fully controlling the breathing air. The ultimate state of the pranayam system is to be fixed in transcendental called samadhi. But experience has proven that even the samadhi stage also falls to control the materially absorbed mind. For example, the great mystic Brahmas Vishwamitra Muni, even in the stage of samadhi, become of victim of the senses and cohabited with Menoka. accorded this. The mind, although ceasing to think of seasonal activities at present, remember past sensual activities for the subsequent stays, and those disrupt one from chain process engagement of self-realization. Therefore, Sukadev Goswami recommended the next step of assured policy, namely of fix one's mind in the service of the personality of the Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, also recommended this direct process in the Bhagavad Gita 6.47. Those the mind being spiritually cleanliness, one should at one engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord by the different devotional service of hearing, chanting, etc. If performed under proper guidance, that is the surest part of progress, even for the disturbed mind.
Yeah, so this verse is continuing on practicing regulating the breathing, and it says Shubha Arthe, which is translated as for the sake of the Lord. So changing the focus, like from detaching it from the material senses, we can be engaged in the service of the Lord, as it is described here. And then the last verse that's planned for today. Tatraiva avyayam dhyayet
Tatrekavyam dhaye
avyuchinnena chetasa
abhyuchinena chetasa
mano nirvishayam yuktva
mano nirvishayam yuktva
tata kinchana na smaret
tata kinchana smare
padam tat paramam vishnor
padam tat paramam vishnur
mano yatra prasidati.
manoyatra prasidati.
Translation is, thereafter you should meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu one after another without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. Thus the mind becomes free from all sense objects. There should be no other thing to be thought upon. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is the ultimate truth, the mind becomes completely reconciled in Him only. So continuing on from the prior verse, here Shukadev Goswami is instructing to meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu, which is in the purport, there is reference to the Virat Rupa, the universal form. So the Virat Rupa was shown by Krishna to who all?
Arjuna.
Arjuna first. So that was shown, I think, in
Chapter.
chapter 11. And before that, in chapter 10, is the Vibhuti Yoga, where Krishna talks about all the great things, all the grandeur in the material world. Like, I am the taste of water, strength in men. And like it is kind of to help us think of Krishna when we look at day-to-day aspects of life or all the extraordinary aspects in life. And after he talks about that, then he shows that great form to Arjuna, because Arjuna has the Divya Chakshu or spiritual eyes. And then he also showed it to Yashoda Mata, right? When he opened the mouth, like the whole universe was seen. And then I heard from a Vaishnava teacher that Krishna also showed it to Duryodhana. But Duryodhana wasn't ready to see it, or he didn't want to see it, so Duryodhana could see only the light. He didn't have the Shastra Chakshu or spiritual eyes. And then about Virata Roop, I was also looking at the Subodhini by Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, and there is a nice talk on YouTube that talks about Ashtanga Yoga versus Bhakti Yoga by Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. I highly recommend that. That will clear everything. Like, this is just the beginning of instructions in Ashtanga Yoga that Shukadev Goswami gives to Parikshit Maharaj. In the later verses, there is more to come about it. But there is a nice summary and comparison of Ashtanga Yoga versus Bhakti Yoga and how one is better than the other. So about Virata Rupa, there is like what is described here in these verses is to meditate on the Virata Rupa or the limbs of the Vishnu. And it is recommended to do that until love for personal form is reached. So for those who still haven't made a connection with the personal feature of the Lord, including myself, this is a progressive stage. Like this will help progress in bhakti. And it can also be equated with one of the stages of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and then comes Vishnu Smaranam. So Vishnu Smaranam is kind of like meditating on the limbs of Vishnu. And one interesting, while I was preparing for today's session, when I heard in a class where they asked at the end, it was I think on the YouTube channel called Gita Gyan, Sanatan Nitai Gaur Prabhu asked the audience, is the Virat Roop material, transcendental or imaginary? Does anybody know? Or what is your answer?
I have heard this before. I have to say it's imaginary.
Yeah, so there is references to both in the Srimad Bhagavatam, like Alankar Prabhu said, it is described in Canto 1, chapter 3, verse 30, it is said that it is an imaginary form. But in the purports of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verses 5 and 45, it is described to be a temporary and it is subject to time, so which means it is a material form. So just something that I found interesting, like what exactly is Virata Rupa? It's hard for me to understand. So when I heard that it's material and it's imaginary, and it is one of the stages until we reach love for personal feature of the Lord or connection with personal feature of the Lord. And also Srila Prabhupada has said about Virata Rupa that it's for those whose heart is still impure, for those who can't accept personal feature of the Lord. They meditate on the Virata Rupa and they gradually qualify to rise to the personal connection with the Lord. It represents the Aishwarya or the opulence aspect of the Lord before one can appreciate the Madhurya or the sweetness aspect of Krishna. In the Subodhini also at the end there are some descriptions. So page 257 talks about details of the Virata Rupa.
Actually, there are more verses coming up in future.
Yeah.
So next is questions by Parikshit Maharaj, and then after that there are like about from text 24 to text 34. 10 verses are on Virat Rupa, description of Virat
Wow,
Rupa.
okay. So we'll discuss more later. But just one point I wanted to make was that even to meditate on the magnificent forms of the deities, we have such gorgeous forms here of Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan network. Even to meditate on the limbs starting from the lotus feet of the Lord, it takes so much focus. So many times I come to the temple and they don't even look at what outfits they're wearing or how they're adorned, loving. So that is a meditation in itself, and it takes so much focus. So what to speak of the formless representation, the Virata Rupa or the Brahman or the Omkar feature? It doesn't really, it's not sustainable also to practice the Ashtanga Yoga. I wanted to say it's difficult, of course, like I said, but just withdrawing the senses, like the examples given in the last verse about the excellent practitioners like Vishwamitra Muni. There is also example of Saubhara Muni, how they've succumbed to senses, temptation again. So it will be sustainable only when, like in Bhagavad Gita, they say a higher taste is developed. So that way, just sitting still, I have myself tried through last decade or so many tools of spirituality. I have done the silence retreat, means just to sit still or reach a desireless stage. It's next to impossible, especially in today's world where everything, like the mind is used to so much stimulation, like mindless scrolling all the time on the devices, social media, uh, all the new features like the reels and YouTube shorts, like they all are designed thinking that our attention span is like a fish, like we need constantly like to refresh the page and look for something else. Like in such a conditioned state, like it's almost impossible to go to a secluded place and be still and chant Om. And so we'll see in the next verses how what the conclusion is, but this is just a description of Ashtanga Yoga that has begun in this context. But it's not just nothingness. They are talking about the Virata Rupa of Vishnu and telling the services to service of the Lord. So, anything wants to add or correct me, and please forgive me for anything I misspoke. And if something good came, it is totally because of the so many Vaishnava acharyas. It was so easy to prepare lately with Veda Base. You can just search Control F or listen to classes. There are so many classes on YouTube from ISKCON teachers on these 5 verses. Like, even though I spent a week preparing, I could not listen to all of them. There are some really good classes from the Rupanuga Institute in the Kansas City. The
I
brahmacharis
was
there.
listening to that only. The
Yeah.
one brahmachari was doing the class on 1.15.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then ISKCON of Naperville also, they are doing systematic study. About a year ago, they were reading from these verses. So all of that helped me prepare. So I'm grateful. And thank you for contributing your realizations and discussions as well.
I do have a question. So you mentioned that that's not sustainable of sitting and all the processes of Ashtanga. They're basically the tools,
Yeah.
including Virat Rupa, to gradually progress to the personal, to get attracted to the personal feature of the Lord.
Yeah.
But then thinking that why there are so many, it's so popular and it's not. I don't know how you came to that realization that it's not sustainable and it's not something that can help in advancement.
Yeah.
But there are people who actually don't.
It attracts more audience for sure. Even look at our community, the monthly events that Leela Manjari Mataji and Prince Sindhu Prabhu lead. So many new people come to that, but how many new people come to the Bhakti Yoga aspects? Because it's just so attractive to, like, people are, yeah.
They are sustaining, no? They are sustaining also.
Yeah, they still think that it is all in, like, it's, I think their tendencies, they maybe haven't understood the big picture, like I was saying, like, yeah, what yoga has come down to in today's commercial world is asana or pranayama at the most. They don't teach about the yamas and niyamas. Like, there are such ridiculous combinations of yoga I have come across, like
Goat yoga.
goat yoga is one of them. Yoga and nuggets, like they eat chicken nuggets and practice yoga. Champagne and yoga, like it's just whatever attracts the audience, they combine that with yoga. And yoga is nothing but gymnastics that has become, it's just, which is great. We all need to maintain our body so we can serve it towards the Lord. So I'm not saying not to practice it, but not to spend excessive time and keep it sacred, So.
But then also this, silence, retreat and things like that is also sustaining. The people are in it for long.
It does attract a lot of people.
So why is that they get attracted to stay silent and they enjoy it? I've also met people who say that, I had like the most wonderful experience of my life and I want to keep doing it.
Yeah, I have close friends who still, they have dedicated their life to just those teachings.
Teachers,
they are teachers there too. I think what attracts them is that there's no mention of religion, or it's just like all encompassing, they think, like, and I think it's just mind control is like practical way to live, and they're learning all of that. And because religion is said to be like a private or personal aspect, so saying Krishna versus some other name. Like they don't get into all of those controversies. So those are some attractive features of that, I think, in my realizations and hearing from those who sustain there.
Yeah, so after some point it has to come to the conclusion that it's very dry.
Yeah.
It's dry, it's dull, there is no impetus to, like, okay, where is the happy part?
Yeah.
There is a fun part, and they can have fun, but so much fun, yeah, with hundreds and thousands of people sitting in the room quietly.
Yeah. There are so many things in common, then there are differences between these two paths. So once they realize that it's like a lot of what they teach in those other impersonal schools is, I think it's incomplete because there is no mention of the Supreme Controller, Lord, or anything, but there are things in common, so they could align. Like it attracts people, and then people can come to bhakti. So it's a good segue or starting point.
Yeah, just like here it said, right? That okay, if they want to achieve the personal realization, then okay, here is a tool.
Yeah.
Meditate on the Virat Rupa.
Yeah.
Like if that's your qualification, because even to become attracted to personal feature, you have to be qualified.
Yeah, I'm opening a chart that Gauranga Darshan Prabhu has nicely created, where it shows what it takes to, in that YouTube class that I mentioned, you will see that. But verses that are coming up, so verse from 15 to 32, there is description of Ashtanga Yoga in this chapter. And in this chart, it shows practice and process of leaving of an advanced yogi, which is karma mukti. Like it's such a long, there is a flow chart that shows after meditating on Virata Roop, if you still have material desires, then you have to go back to the Krama Mukti, which is like there is so many steps there. If not, then you go to the Dharana stage, and then you concentrate on the Paramatma feature, and like it's such a long process. So that's why like it's a difficult and not a sustainable path, especially in the today's age. Yeah, vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
This is
Thank
always
you.
so fascinating.